This one's for you, Oliver, I think. After watching your Stellar Blade PS5 Pro review this week, I came away a little confused by the array of options provided to users. It appeared, based on your analysis, that the quote-unquote Pro mode provided the optimal experience on every front, with both the highest and most stable frame rates and the best image quality and visual fidelity. In this instance, why even offer the four other modes, given that none of them trump the quote-unquote Pro mode in any meaningful way? Would it not have been a much more elegant user experience to only offer the Pro mode plus a high frame rate toggle for people with TVs that support 120 Hz or VRR? And maybe hide the additional options in a sub-menu for anyone who wants to play around with them for niche academic reasons. I'm looking forward to that paper on Stellar Blade options. Anyway, do you think that for most people, using the PS5 Pro would be a more enjoyable experience if developers simply curated for them the optimal one or two modes that provide the definitive version of the game, instead of stressing them out with a deluge of options that they have to sift through? So this is a what you might call a bugbear of yours, isn't it, Oliver? Too many modes.
Yeah, perhaps I'm going on a bit too much about this, but yes, fewer modes. No need to have the old modes in there, or if indeed you do feel compelled to put them in there, hide them. Don't show them as part of the standard menu, perhaps, and make sure you steer players towards those better modes. In general, I think you really want to make sure that everything is in really good form. It's QA'd properly, and it's clearly set up so that if you have more than one mode, you're clearly communicating to the player exactly what those modes do, and you're making sure that every single one of them is a high-quality mode that presents a legitimate balance between performance and image quality, or performance and ray tracing, or et cetera, these various priorities that we tend to see in console software. I think in particular for a game that doesn't use RT, you can probably get one or two modes that encompass a broad enough spectrum of player preference to end up with a good experience there. I think like 60 FPS mode, maybe an unlocked mode, maybe a 60 FPS mode, maybe a 30 FPS mode, things like this, that seems pretty clear to me. I think ultimately, though, this is a bit of a question for QA, and I think some developers are maybe just a little bit scared to say, let's take away some options from the player. They'd rather give you more options, because that's, in some sense, that can be a little bit simpler for them. I think ultimately, in terms of addressing player preference. But my own personal preference is, like, for sure, in an instance like Stellar Blade, you should basically be providing players with the game experience that is going to give them a solid experience out of the gate. And if that means constricting players to one mode or two modes, if that means cutting down some modes and hiding them somewhere, perhaps, or marking them clearly as the old modes, I think that's a good option. Like in The Last of Us Part 2 and Part 1, they have Pro mode, and actually I noticed that every single time you boot the game, if you have it in the old modes, because they do have the old modes in there, the fidelity mode and the performance mode, the game will prompt you to switch to the Pro mode. It'll be like, hey, we noticed that you're launching this game in one of the old modes. You should switch to the Pro mode, because this is really the mode that we want you to experience. So there it's like you're getting a really good 4K 60 mode. They're always prompting you to use it. You still have the old modes if you want to do something like really high frame rates with unlocking the game's frame rate in VRR. To me, I think that's a good balance between these different priorities here. So if they need to go in one direction that involves multiple modes, perhaps that's the way they could go.
That's pretty comprehensive. What's your take on this, Alex? Because obviously the PC side of things, it's all modes, all options at the ultra sort of granular level.
Yeah.
And I kind of think maybe there is we've often talked about it in the past, can you just have a console settings setting, please?
Yeah, that would always help. And I think one thing that Oliver is stressing on, and one thing that I also stress on PC, obviously with differences there, is that on PC, I want meaningful settings that are different in some good way. Otherwise, it can maybe be a little bit confusing. A good example is you don't want like a VRS option. That doesn't work. I've seen that constantly in a bunch of titles. Like you just like a VRS toggle and it just doesn't work. Or I'll see an option which changes let's say like SSR in some imperceptible way, or SSAO in some imperceptible way. And I'm just like, whatever, just use the alt.
There's no performance change whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. So I do not like not meaningful options. I want meaningful options, and preferably as many of them as possible. But that's a PC thing. And I think on the console side, there should be a level of simplification given to the user. And I do actually think it is interesting that, like you mentioned with The Last of Us, Oliver, that they are like saying, hey, you don't have that option on. You should maybe put it on. And recently, for the Stalker video, I loaded up just the Xbox, which I haven't turned on in probably since Starfield came out or something like that. And when the video options, I just wanted to make sure they were fine, like 4K 60. But I was attached to my 4K 120 capture card. And the Xbox in the video settings menu has like a little recommended tab that was telling me to turn on 4K 120 and VRR, which I'd never seen before, which was cool. So I do like the idea of console owners and game developers on console nudging you towards what they prefer, what they think is actually the preferred visual option. I think that's great, with some sort of signage, postage, or like you said, like a pop-up. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to have lots of modes, just make the default mode the best mode when you actually launch the game. Right. Because it's something one developer told me is that the majority of the audience don't actually access the mode selections at all, which is kind of crazy, but it's true. According to him, at least. And this was like a major third-party franchise, by the way. And in that scenario, just have the default choice be the best choice. I think that's pretty straightforward.